Hello, everybody. There we go. Hello, everybody. How y'all doing?
Oh, are you talking to us? Doing well.
Talking to you, the audience, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of What Are You? The best podcast in the Midwest, right? It is what is it? Like, I don't know. I haven't seen the weather outside, so I'm just like looking out. But yes, welcome back to another episode of What Are You? Today's episode is going to be on marijuana. Um, a quick disclaimer: this is not going to be on our social, views on marijuana. We're just strictly going into the facts and the information and the impact that the legalization of marijuana, specifically in Colorado, and then outwards into the entire nation, has impacted not only students but also people of color and you know what views we have for like the future going forward.
Right.
But yeah.
And I think it'll be an interesting perspective because Ray and I are not from Colorado, and Chelsea is. And so we have different perspectives. I mean, you can talk, Chelsea, about like how different Denver is now than it was before it was legalized and all of that. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting topic. But yeah, like Ray said, it's definitely we'll be discussing more about like the impact of marijuana than anything else. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, like, before marijuana was legalized, I forgot when.
2010 medically and 2014 recreationally.
Before that, it was deemed. I think it still is. It just depends how marijuana is perceived through different people of color in like different ethnic groups, right? And you can see conversations happening via social media platforms or in person, in conferences and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The way that marijuana is talked about within people of color is more of criminalizing their bodies, um, with the outcome of like, putting them in jail, life sentence, or whatever the case the scenario is. If they're holding like how many ounces of marijuana on them, if they do get pulled over, or the police enforcements are suspecting that they have something on them, that's racial profiling. And we can see a lot of recent news and just like personal narratives that there are different kinds of ways of how marijuana plays into people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you can definitely compare them between people of color versus white. And so I believe that the conversations around marijuana pertaining to people of color have been the same. It hasn't changed. But when we see marijuana being passed as a law for it to be sold, right, via medical use and recreationally, yeah, that when white people use it, it's sort of like this cool thing, this hip thing, this new thing, right? Even though marijuana has been used for decades ago, millions of years ago, right? Herbs and stuff to cure diseases and help with mental disorders and stuff. It's just that the way that the news takes this information, they'd rather have the dominant narrative take over that conversation, right? So when I say dominant, I'm talking about people in power, people in position of power that have money, that have resources, that can capitalize off of businesses that grow, sell weed and stuff. And when we look into Denver neighborhoods, the top 5 places that have the most pot shops or cannabis businesses would be Elyria, Swansea, which has 13 pot shops, Baker, 12, 5 Points, which has 11, and Northeast Park Hill, which has 10. Now, there hasn't been enough studies going on in terms of like, well, why are um, pot shops being built near poor neighborhoods and primarily poor Black and brown neighborhoods, right? There's this association between um, that the only way to push out, which is called gentrification, push out these poor families and individuals still living in that certain communities, is to place a business that will likelihood boom, that will build off of their own social capital
Mm-hmm.
and the business, and really not taking care of the communities, right? Like, how do you give back to
Mhm.
make sure that they're still living there and that you're respecting that the community's culture and history are still there? But this whole um, building businesses within those poor neighborhoods is just a way for them to push out these poor families and individuals, which is a bad thing. But conversations about gentrification seem to be like tucked away
Mm-hmm.
under the rug. They
Mhm.
like to like sugarcoat it, use it as a good term that because we have these growing businesses in cannabis, um, that it's a good thing. But technically, when you're doing this within areas that are poor, it's basically trying to get rid of them and then start building like lofts and luxury homes. And so where do these poor communities live now, right?
Right. And these are probably like the neighborhoods that have been targeted before all of this
Mhm.
happened to find people who have used marijuana as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So this has been happening, and I mean, I know conversations are happening in like public health world in terms of like, well, where are those communities living now?
Mm-hmm.
They're directly being pushed like at a center core, because once that it gets filled up, I mean, they don't know what will happen, right? um, but there are possible consequences to that when you start to push poor communities of color into just one certain area. You can see the effects of that happening, like for example, poor hygiene, unstable housing, right? Poor sanitation, inadequate housing in terms of like paying the cost for rent or being able to pay food to feed your family and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I bet the listeners were not expecting it to go this way. They were like, we're about to have some fun and talk about this.
yeah,
Yeah, no, like there's some real things
Yeah.
happening out here
yeah,
because of
Yeah, because I definitely could see audience members, including myself, like even back in the day, like knowing how weed was perceived,
Mm-hmm.
and then all out of nowhere, like on the other side of the country, you see one state you know make it legalized for recreational use, and then everyone's like, oh well, it's just going to be nothing but criminals doing this and da da da. But then you see high end snowboarders, skiers, like
doing it.
Yep.
predominantly like white people engage into it, and so then it becomes trendy, and then
It's called
those
trendy now.
yeah,
Yeah.
those people are like, I'm going to capitalize on this, and then they start making their own weed shops and then their own dispensaries, and so then it just flips
Right,
to now it's not bad because I'm using this because my
right.
And the reason why they, I mean, for me personally, from based off of what I read from research, um, like accredited journals, right? That's what you're
Mhm.
supposed to be reading from. Is that weed is perceived as bad, right? So placing him in poor neighborhoods um, is tying in this assumption that poor neighborhoods and communities are um, criminals basically. But if
Mhm.
you place a pot shop within an affluent,
Right,
predominantly white neighborhood, that could mean different things, right? And so, what is this messaging like? What are they trying to say with placing pot shops in
right.
different certain neighborhoods? Yeah.
Yeah. And for people who like don't really understand like or just to kind of clarify, especially with someone who came from out of state coming here, just because marijuana is legalized doesn't mean you can smoke it everywhere either here. There are some towns, it was more in mountain towns that I saw that they had signs saying like you cannot smoke marijuana like publicly. I mean, you're not supposed to smoke it publicly anywhere. It's kind of like drinking alcohol. But there are some places that just don't have like a dispensary in like the downtown area, and you have to go to the next places over. So you can still tell like the areas that don't really want to bring it in, and are really pushing against that and still have a lot of feelings about it. So just because it's like legalized here in Colorado doesn't mean that everyone's accepting of it. And it's still very taboo here too. That's the other thing. Like it doesn't get brought up in conversations like how like going for happy hour, or like drinking a glass of wine or something like that, which was surprising to me, honestly. Like coming here, I was expecting it to be a little bit more like affluent in like conversations, or more constant, but it is still like very taboo, and a lot of places still drug test and things like that, where you really still cannot smoke it,
Yeah.
um, or ingest it. And that also like leads into THC versus CBD, because even the testing, it's THC that they're looking for. For those of you who like don't know the difference, like CBD and THC both come from marijuana. They have two different chemical structures. CBD just doesn't have like the euphoria effect that THC has, and they treat they usually treat different things. So CBD is really known for like seizures or inflammation or pain. I know a lot of people like have made it into like menstrual creams, that if you're having cramps, you can like rub CBD like lotion in the area that it has to kind of like relax the muscles. And it sometimes CBD helps with depression and anxiety. THC is more like pain. If someone has low appetite, I do know people who like medically were prescribed to it back in Missouri, and it's to help with, because they're taking other medications that makes them lose their appetite. And so being prescribed like a THC, they're able to get their appetite back and eat. So there are a lot of CBD and THC just do different things. And there are even some places that it might be medicalized in that state, but it's only CBD that they'll allow as well. So even that is like, just because something's medicalized doesn't really mean like it's up and coming to get recreational
Yeah.
next.
For like medically, like you'd have to go through a doctor, get the prescription, go through like the appointments, see how you're doing, and then if they need to lower the dose, they can. You can't.
Right.
It's the whole thing. Um, but it's interesting that you brought up, it being medically legalized in Missouri. It is 2020. So it's been 60 years since the first state has been legalized in both medical and recreational. I was wondering if you guys knew the other states that were legalized.
So I did some research before this. Clearly, I don't know all these facts off the top of my head, and I'm not that invested in this. So, but it is just like interesting. But there are 10 states that are fully legalized. 10 states plus DC. So it's California, Colorado, Illinois, Michigan, Maine, Massachusetts, Washington, Oregon, Alaska, and Vermont. So those are all fully legalized. There are 11 states that allow medical marijuana and also have decriminalized marijuana. There are the most people, or most states have voted it to just be medical only, and that's 16 states. There's only three states that have decriminalized it, and then there's still 8 states that it's completely illegal. Yeah, so which I'm looking at the list of states and I'm like, yeah, that makes
Yeah. I think what was a topic that me and Alma we touched on yesterday was the question of whether it's going to be legal, nationwide. I remember, I think in high school, we played it off as a joke that it wasn't even going to be like medically, legal like at all. And then 2011, 2010, it started in Colorado. Um, and this is coming from Virginia, so the East Coast was like, there's no way it's going to be recreational for anybody. Come on now. And so now we're going into like 2020, so I kind of want to hear your opinions. Um, I don't believe that it's going to be nationwide legal ever. Personally, I think like to what Chelsea was saying. I think that marijuana is still kind of like this weird bubble where the government can turn it into anything it wants.
Mhm.
And I think as long as they can keep somewhat of that like taboo nature and like that evil, lingering reputation that it's had since like decades before, um, then it can definitely like use it to its advantage and push other drugs such as like nicotine and cigarettes, which are still going strong.
Mhm.
Even though there's been so many like efforts to prevent teen smoking
Mm.
of cigarettes and everything like that. And so I think definitely there's a lot of states, Virginia, who've been like, the tobacco state since like when it was founded. That I don't think it's gonna let go of like one of the exports that's used it to, thrive. You know.
Oh yeah, especially when you still have the people in positions of power that want to still hold policies and law that criminalize folks for using marijuana, right?
Right.
But also the fact that marijuana is used as um, within the institutional racism structure.
Mm-hmm.
They're taking this advantage to keep that, to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that holds in place. Because if we did legalize marijuana in the entire nation, I mean, what happens to that, right? That,
Control.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I like, if we're being like really real here, the people who should have like started the first dispensaries were people of color, especially the Black and Latinx community. I mean, they were the ones who were punished the most for everything. And it I can go down a rabbit hole.
I think, yeah, to go to your point, I think, you know, let's, in a scenario, a hypothetical, let's say like the entire, bam, the whole nation's legal, right? So then you have to ask yourself, like, what's going to happen to the people who've been given 20 years, 30 years, 40 years of jail time
Yep.
just for having marijuana on them, And so private prisons would go out of their mind. Like they'd be like, oh no, we have to keep these criminals because
Right.
they're criminals. It's like, but all they have is weed. So like, why don't you just let them go? It's like,
Mhm.
well, they were criminals before them. It's like, no, their only offense was just having weed. Um, yeah,
Which many other white boys in college, at least in my experience, have had in states that were legal, like as well. Like I was in Missouri before this, and there, yes, yes, it's literally just the targeting that has made it this whole big thing. But like, oh man, I'm trying to formulate words, but
I think for me, Chelsea, Alma, and Terry, we were all born near the '90s. I think like during that time, like even in television, weed was such a bad and like evil thing,
Yeah.
and you know, definitely it was like predominantly like people of color who used it in television and stuff like that. And so like you would see this, and then people would connect the dots, and then you would see, what was it, the lion? I don't know. I think it was the lion that had like the dare shirt,
Yeah.
like to don't do drugs or whatever. And so you put two and two together, and so like you know now that we got into this place where people are like capitalizing and being growers and like producing like you know their product, which it's a business and all this, you know, you kind of have to like look back and think of yourself as like, oh, I wonder why like this CEO is some white male kid who got like a business degree who never touched weed until it was legalized and then capitalized it because you know
legal.
yeah. Like I think definitely this is just where capitalism lives and thrives, and unfortunately, it does hurt people of color.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, it's very interesting, just to have this conversation. And it's unfortunate because I don't see the nation going fully legal anytime soon, especially when we have like white old senators and politicians who are still stuck in the ways of, if this wasn't on the Constitution, then it's the devil's lettuce, it's the wacky tobacco, like whatever.
What do you
So
listen?
Huh?
What do you think about it being legal? Like, do you think it'll ever be legalized nationwide?
I feel like those who hold power in passing the laws should not have a narrow perspective and really be open-minded to look at the benefits. Like, how do you make sure that the communities that are living in the state um, are being heard?
Mm-hmm.
If marijuana is a medical use and it benefits their overall health and well-being,
mhm,
um, I'm pretty sure there are studies being done, right? But there's still lack studies to show, results and stuff. I
Right.
mean, that's one of the reasons why um, some states don't legalize marijuana for medical use purposes. But I
mhm,
know in Colorado they did that for a reason why, right? To pass it as a law.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say that, but again, there's also this conversation with, well, we still live in a country where we criminalize people of color, and how do we get them to be placed in prisons, right? And they can only do so much in certain places,
Mm-hmm.
and they take that advantage to use that. So that's why there's always this like this this or that, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
But I mean, for the medical use, like I wish it was passed in like across the nation, because I mean I'm always reading up on that, and it's changed a lot of people's lives, right?
mhm,
Because even getting it prescribed is a struggle from a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
because with these Western medicine route, some of these doctors don't approve because they'd rather you be on prescriptions for a certain amount of
Right.
time, for years or a decade, and that's how they profit off of your body. Is when you're prescribed one medication, you're prescribed another medication, two more, three more. That's how pharmaceutical companies bank off of, you know people of color, is what I'm talking about, and people who have, pre-existing conditions too. And with medical use of marijuana, they've seen positive results, benefits of how does that affect the body overall versus the prescriptions that are being prescribed to the patient, right?
Right.
mhm,
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. This whole like, then my mind just goes into like voting. Like, you vote for the right people, but I'm like, well, what if the people you vote for don't see the same views that you do, you know?
yeah,
But I feel like if medical marijuana was the law was passed in across the nation, I mean, see how much it would benefit the people's health. That's what I would say. There just needs to be more research done. But I mean, who really fully supports those type of research? That also matters too. How are you going to put funds into that type of research?
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think one of the pivotal research that basically opened the doors for Colorado was the research on Charlotte Fiji. Basically, long story short, she had seizures, and they did research on how CBD oils would actually reduce the amount of seizures, thus opening the doors for funding, the law being passed, and then later on, recreational use being passed. And yeah, too much to Chelsea's point, like definitely everywhere around the nation, a lot of people are having seizures, and
Mm-hmm.
the research behind the reduction of seizures, it's almost like mind blowing how much CBD has helped
Yeah.
um, individuals. Unfortunately, Charlotte, I think at the age of 13, she had passed
Yeah.
recently from the coronavirus. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and, I think from her legacy, it just left like a massive amount of scientists and students who want to study how much more CBD and like marijuana in general can save lives. As much as we can joke about like the you know the euphoric state that like a lot of people have, there's also benefits of like helping with seizures, helping with depression, helping with anxiety, helping with like cramps, all those things. And so now we kind of have to go into like the colliding world of you are a person of a mono-ethnic, multi-ethnic background. How can this plant help you in your lifestyle and your culture?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That was just like my final thought, just because we're running out of time. But yeah, I'm really happy that we talked about this. And if anyone else has any information, you can also hit us up. This is a topic that like I feel as though that I really do need more information on. I would love more information on. We are not experts, but we do love. I personally love how much we've grown in the past 10 years
Mm-hmm.
uh, with this topic, and I hope that it gets more diverse, and I hope it like pans out and becomes more balanced, and everyone is just happy to be using it for their own benefit.
Yeah.
But yes, I guess with that we will close an episode of What Are You? Again, please stay safe, stay healthy. We're definitely like thinking about all the people who are out there, all the healthcare workers who are doing their thing. We're definitely rooting for you, and we want to make sure that that you are our heroes. But yeah, I think our next episode is going to be a 4-month review.
So the next episode will basically, Chelsea, Ray, and I are going to re-listen to our first episode of of the year of 2020, which we talked about our visions and our goals for 2020, and really reflect on what we said during this time and in comparison to like what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So it'll either make us laugh or cry or both, but I'm interested to hear about what everyone's saying. And I honestly think some of the things that we did talk about did happen though. So so yeah, it's gonna be an interesting episode for sure.
Yeah.
Right,
um,
right.
I was like, yay, great. Oh, also, Terry, she will put in the episode that we will be listening to go over like our whole thing, along with all of our episodes. But I'd also like to give a shout out to, I don't know where you are, Alma, either here or there.
I'm technically like on the top right on mine, but that's okay.
Okay. But it's your birthday.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Hey everyone. I hope you know that
Happy birthday.
has been extended. So you have until I think May 1st now. Is that what it is to do your taxes? I thought I heard that.
Oh, it's like July something. I don't know.
Oh, whatever it is. I hope you still fill out your taxes today. Thanks for the birthday wishes.
Yay. But yes, let your Aries energy flow. Flame it up.
It's all bottled inside in this house right now, just wanting to break free. And it's cold outside, so I can't even go outside. But we'll find some way to release this energy.
There you go. But yes, we will see you again on another episode of
What
Are You?
Yay!
Yay! Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all.